Hey, good evening, Brandon. What's going on, man?
How are you, man? Everything's going well on my end. How about you?
Hey, man, I can't complain, man. I'm happy to have you tonight. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. I think it's something that's very important. We're going to talk about generational wealth and just basically, I look at you as the millionaire next door. So we're going to have that conversation.
Yeah,
At
sure.
the time, we are live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube. If you are tuning in on Facebook, if you could do me a favor and go over to YouTube and just, like the video, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. Today, I have a young man named Brandon. He is actually the content creator on Instagram with Worth Life. What is it? Worth Life Balance.
Yeah,
Worth Life Balance.
work-life balance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Worth Life Balance. And I want you to tell me a little bit about, yourself and tell me how you came up with that name, Worth Life Balance.
Yeah, first, I appreciate you having me, man. When you reached out, always happy to share, especially, in our community. It's much needed, so I'm happy to be here and share my story. I started the Instagram about a year ago. I started off originally on Facebook. 2020 was happening with COVID and social unrest. And so I was just trying to figure out, I'm building for my family, doing my thing in my own sort of corner of the world. And then I realized, like, you know what? I mean, marching really wasn't where I could see myself being most put to use with my gifts. And so I started with just financial empowerment, right? Because a lot of 2020 was emphasizing wealth disparities, different gaps, socioeconomic gaps. And so I started on my Facebook page, man, really with the purpose of people I grew up with, just to put information out there and share information. So I wasn't, preaching anything. I was just literally sharing articles, I read on CNBC, Bloomberg magazine, just kind of a little snippets like here's LeBron James and here's what he's doing. Here's what he said about investing kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so Facebook is a little different crowd, people I know. So it wasn't really like a community sort of thing, mainly posting a little bit of, some people would comment, not that much. But I didn't want to really fill up my feed with, the same content. So then I got inspired to just move it over to Instagram. And so when I moved it over to Instagram, I put the call out on Facebook. Hey, I'm moving this content over there. If you're interested, come follow, whatever. And it was the same thing. So it really wasn't taking much of my time, but I was just putting out information. So again, posting articles and things of that nature. And then as I started to get on, I realized, there's like a whole financial community of creators on Instagram, right? And so some of the early ones I followed, I saw them doing stuff like tracking their net worth, right? And kind of showing charts and graphs to demonstrate that. And then they were doing all kind of stuff, just like, fancy graphics. And so I realized, like, man, that's kind of cool. Like, okay, let me learn how to do that, right? Yeah. And so I came up with the name Worth Life Balance. I thought about it for a while. The page was originally called Financially Lit, 101. Yeah. So it didn't really stick with me that much. And so I stewed on it for a bit. I chewed on it for a while. And then I was thinking about work-life balance. As it came across my job, the comment came. And I saw it and I'm like, what about worth-life? There it is. Like, instead of work-life balance, this whole thing is about worth-life balance. You're trying to manage, build wealth, get your financial resources in order. But at the same time, like, nobody wants to be consumed by work. Nobody really wants to be consumed by their finances either. You're building you're going to work for family to provide for things. You're building net worth for the same things, right? You want to provide for your family. You want to be able to retire early. So all these different things. So it just kind of fit. And it was a little play on words. So hopefully people get the reference whenever they see work-life balance, man. So I'm happy to share a lot of content with people, to share some of the things that I've done, things that I'm doing. And I just try to break it down into simple terms, so that, use my financial background to put it into a fancy graphic. So hopefully whoever comes across it can grab onto it and take action.
Man, good stuff, man. I want to thank Dawn for tuning in on YouTube. So you kind of describe yourself as a welfare kid turned into millionaire. Why don't you just describe your upbringing, man? Like, what was your relationship like with money growing up?
Yes, my mom had me 19 years old when she got pregnant. She was about 20 years old and 2 months when I was born. Single mother. My dad was in the picture, but like if you blur out the picture, he's like back there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
He wasn't in the forefront in focus. And so yeah, my mom raised me. You know, I'm sure she was scared out of her mind. You know, 19-year-old young girl, having a son. So when she first had me, you know, she was on welfare for the first year. You know, luckily we had support from my grandparents. So we lived in my grandparents' house for the first probably about 7 years of my life. We lived out there. And so, you know, young, I didn't have a real relationship with money. You know, when you're young, things are simple. As long as you're fed, clothed, and you have a roof over your head, you know, you're happy for the most part. You think things are just fine. So yeah, but that kind of shaped my relationship with money. You know, soon after that, whenever I got to be of age and I started, you know, to ask for things, right? You know, you go to the store and, hey, at the checkout aisle, can I get this? And, oh, why can't I get this? And so some of the explanations were, you know, simple, right? No, right? I mean, it wasn't anything complex, but the word no became more prevalent, right? And so my mom might say, you know, you got to put it back. Like, I don't have enough for that, right? So those little things. And so fast forward, maybe I was probably like 10, maybe 11 years old or so. I ended up getting a paper route because my mom, you know, kind of said, hey, you always kind of asking for things and you kind of want things. Like, how about you get a paper route so you can kind of start to work and get some of your own money, right? And so even that in itself, typically, I don't know how much people that come from, you know, wealthier backgrounds have a paper route, right? So usually that's telling that a kid is having to get a paper route and doesn't have, you know, a mom or dad to kind of just bankroll their whole childhood. But that kind of set me up, man, you know, doing the paper route. There was one half of it that was, you know, kid delivering the papers. Mm-hmm. The other half of it was more business side where you had to go out and collect the money, right? So you're having to deal with, you know, I don't remember how much people owed for the newspaper back then, but they're paying for like a monthly subscription. So you have to go knock on the door, you know, get them the little receipt, collect the money. And the way it worked was, it was a little bit like a payday loan almost. So I'd go collect the money, but then my boss would come, I don't know, a week later to come get it. So there was this float period in between where it's like, oh, I got this money, but it's not yet due, right? So me being very young and naive, there might be a time where, okay, I owe my boss, let's make up a number, $50 I owe him. And I have 40 right now, but there's, you know, a couple more people who still owe me the money. Okay, let me spend the money now, counting on me collecting it from these other people before he comes knocking on my door, right? And so I learned a tough lesson one time whenever I went to go collect money. And, you know, I wasn't from a wealthy neighborhood, so I went to collect a couple, you know, money from a couple of people, and they didn't answer the door, right? And so this is the daytime. I'm like, okay, maybe they're just at work, right? So I'll come back at nighttime. So I see the lights on in the window. I'm like, cool, all right, they're home. They got the front door wide open. I knock on the door, keep knocking. Nobody's answering. I'm like, I know y'all are in there. You got the door open. Like, I see the lights on. Like, everybody's like, be quiet in the back of the house kind of thing. Right? And so I didn't get the money. So I'm short. And so the next week, my boss comes to collect the money. And so he knocks on my door. So what did I do?
You didn't answer.
I didn't answer the door either. I didn't answer the door either. And so I learned from the best, right? I learned from the best. Like, turn off the TV, put it on mute. Like, I'm not home, man. So here I am, you know, picture this. It's an 11-year-old, 12-year-old kid knowing, right, knowing that I owe somebody money and how to avoid them. So that always, like, you know, is a memorable time to me because I didn't like the feeling literally sitting there and you hear knocking at the door, right? And this is pre-cell phone days, so didn't have any other way to really contact me. But just the feeling of sitting there, like, man, I owe this person some money and I'm literally acting like I'm not here, right? And so from that moment, I learned, like, okay, as long as I have this paper route, I'm not spending the money before I get it. And as you know, that's a valuable lesson even today. as you get to be an adult, you know, we live in a very consumer heavy society where it's all about, you know, marketing. I tell people all the time, there's literally people paid, you know, high salaries, you know, they go to school to be experts in how to manipulate and to market things in a way to get us to part ways with our hard-earned money, right? So that lesson of like, don't spend it before you got it from like 11, 12 years old carried forward with me later in life. So the remainder of that paper route I had, you know, I might have, okay, I got $100. All right, maybe I can go get, let's call it a pair of J's, or I'm gonna get the classic Air Force Ones, or I'm gonna get something maybe for like $65 instead. So I started realizing like, hey, I work for this money. I don't want to spend it all at once. How can I stretch it a little bit? I want to get a shoes and a shirt. So maybe it's not J's. Maybe it's, you know, a pair of Chucks, and then I can get a shirt and a hat to rock it and look fresh rather than just blowing it all on shoes kind of thing, right? And so a lot of that stuff just remained with me, man. Even before I really figured out finance, just not getting into debt and not spending money that I didn't have was just something that carried with me.
Man, that's some good stuff, man. I actually have a similar story. I remember being like 10 years old and selling that fundraiser candy.
Oh, yeah.
Man, I swear I had like $150 one time and it disappeared, right?
Yeah.
Some of it might have went to rent. Some might have went towards, you know, junk food at the corner store. But I think we all have those similar stories, man. So I totally understand it. So did you grow up with siblings?
Yeah, I have a younger sister, but she's like 7 years my junior. So, you know, when you're kids, 7 years is like an eternity, man. So, I mean, I'm in 12th grade. She's in 5th. So it's two different worlds. But yeah, I had a younger sister.
I got you, man. So your love for money and finances, when did that begin? Like actually sitting down thinking like, I want to be rich one day. I want to be wealthy or well off one day.
Yeah. I mean, like everybody else that I've come across, I haven't met anybody who's ever said they started investing like at the right time. Everybody's story is, man, I wish I knew what I knew now earlier. I'd be farther ahead than I am right now, right? I hear that. You see it. I see it on social media all the time. For me, I never really thought about like finance at all, really. I went to college and majored in communications. Mainly because a teacher in high school said, you know, you have a nice speaking voice, right? And so I don't know how your school rolled, but in my school, you know, in the earlier years, you would have like a passage or something. You're reading Macbeth or some story, and they would literally go around the room like, all right, you take the first paragraph, you know, you take the next one. And so, you know, that's when the teacher would hear me kind of speak. And so, you know, that's where I got the idea from. And I played football. Fortunately, I was good enough that paid for my college education. But my idea was, okay, I'm good in all my subjects in high school, but I don't love them. I mean, I come to school every day. I do what I'm supposed to do, right? I come to school. I don't get in trouble. While I'm here, I might as well listen to what the teacher says and get a decent grade on this test and just keep it moving, right? And play my sports, and that's it. But then as I got to be, you know, pretty good and school started giving me scholarship offers, I'm like, what am I going to major in? Like, you know, I really wasn't an NFL kind of, I'm going to the league kind of mindset. It was just, I played for fun, man. And I got good enough to where college wanted me to come play for them, right? So I looked at it as an opportunity to get a college education because, I mean, my mom didn't have a 529 plan, you know, waiting for me to pay for my school. And so I was like, cool. So I'm going to get to go to college. And so when I went to college, I'm like, what am I going to do? And so I said, oh, well, that teacher in 9th grade said I had a nice speaking voice. So cool. Maybe I'll do broadcast journalism. If I get a decent name for myself in football from college, I can pivot that and maybe call some games, right? So I'm thinking, you know, Monday Night Football, when like John Madden was calling games, that's what I'm envisioning. Like, okay, cool. I get to call football, the game I love, and get paid for it. So no brainer. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And then I think my freshman year, I was watching Monday Night Football one time. And I don't know, man, I guess the heavens opened up or something. And I saw like a vision. And all I saw was, man, John Madden's, that guy's been on TV for a long time, man. Like, there's not a lot of these jobs that probably come open. You know? Like, yeah, when these guys get the job, like, they tend to keep them for like decades,
Yeah.
And so I thought about it and I'm like, oh, maybe I need to do something different. And so I talked to to an uncle of mine, and I kind of told him like, what do you think I should major in? My uncle was a physician, and he said, well, I mean, you're good with numbers, so why not think about finance? Because people always gonna need money. Somebody's always gonna be using money. So, I mean, and people get paid well, right? So why not go into finance? And so I went to my to the guidance counselor person and said, yeah, what do I need to do to switch into finance? And so, they told me what I had to do. And so I ended up double majoring in finance and then communications. And so even you would think learning about finance would have been my foray into, financial enlightenment, right? But when you go to school, the textbooks aren't to empower you, right? The textbooks are to empower the business or corporation that you're going to work for, right?
Absolutely.
So you're learning about accounting, right? Principles. You're learning about not about stocks. You learn about a little bit about stocks, but it's mainly about like how to value a stock per se, maybe from like a fundamentals class, but it's mainly to go work for a Wall Street bank doing like investment banking kind of stuff, right? You learn about corporate finance and weighted average cost of capital and all these sort of things that are literally if you're working in a finance department for a corporation. So I graduated from college, man, and went to go try to find a job. Nothing was hitting for me. Like I thought, cool, I'm gonna go to New York. You know what I mean? Like
Everybody else.
Yeah, just roll into investment banking and what's the problem? Like, no big deal. I couldn't find anything in New York. I couldn't find anything, where I was living. And so I ended up working for a small branch for a small bank, in my town, in my city. And so I'm like doing loans, literally doing loans in a strip mall in the branch. And so I'm doing it for about a year, and I'm like, dude, this is just not like, this isn't what I had in mind for how I wanted to use like my time and my talents and where I saw my career kind of going. And so I ended up taking a job doing sales because a friend was like, dude, you'll make more than that just doing some sales, man, like easy. So I did that just to get a switch up. And then fast forward, I ended up moving to a different city with that sales job so I can get an opportunity to work in finance. So luck kind of hit. I moved to the new city, got a job working in finance within 3 months. And then I started to build my career from there. But it was on that job is where I really got like in tune with more of the personal finance. I still wasn't, enlightened, I'll call it. But I sat on the trade floor. So I worked, risk management, financial risk management on the trade floor. So I had access to it. I had my own Bloomberg license on my desk. So I'm like, okay, I'm learning from guys next to me, talking about their 401ks and whatnot, right? And so I'm like, okay, 401k. Like I read the benefits, so I contributed and just kept it on autopilot, right? And just met the 6% or whatever it was, and that was it, And so I just kept doing that, and I would check it every now and again, like, okay, I got a couple thousand, and years go by, like, okay, I got 5 digits now. Okay, like, okay, it's doing something. Like, okay, but I still wasn't thinking, like, here's the number I need to get to. What's my expenses? 25 times my, like, none of that. It was just let's put money into this thing, right? And so I didn't really get, like, I call it enlightened. So I was always doing something. I was chipping away. I didn't get into debt with student loan debt, fortunately, because of my scholarship. I was always like, just managing my money well, but I wasn't building wealth by any means. It wasn't until really when I had my son about 6 years ago is when I really turned it into like turbo boost. So I don't know what my net worth was. I don't know what my balances were. I wasn't tracking like anything. And this is me with a finance undergrad. And by this time, I even had an MBA in finance at this point, right? So I'm still doing, I'm contributing. I got a little IRA, putting in, sprinkling in a little bit of something, but mainly it was just doing my contributions through my 401k that I kind of kept increasing over time, right? So, that little checkbox where it says increase it by 1% a year, I had that checked, and it was just, doing its thing. And so when I had my son, that's when my mind shift changed and said, wait a minute, I'm married. It's not just about me. you know, it's just not about my wife. Like, it's about like my son and my legacy and sort of building for him. And so that's when I really started to focus in, even more so than when I got married. I focused in a little bit when I was married, but, you know, young couple, get married, we just having fun, man. So I really wasn't tracking anything too tight. But when I had my son is when I really, really locked in and said, wait a minute now, like, I don't want to work forever. And I want to make sure that, like, my story of growing up, like, it's a totally, that's not even in his vocabulary. Like, you know, like, he just lives a whole different set of realities, and that he's comfortable enough that he can do whatever he wants to do. And that, you know, we'll be able to support him with those endeavors, whether it be college or, you know, buying his first home, all those sort of things. So that's really when I focused in, man. And so I just locked in, and then it started, you know, we lived below our means, but below our means, and just really pouring everything in. So, you know, maxing out the 401ks, maxing out the Roth IRAs, reading about different tax benefits and how to, you know, trim a little bit off your tax bill and invest that rest. And so that's it, man. Really about 6-7 years ago.
That's good stuff, man. And speaking of Roth IRAs and 401ks, what are all of the vehicles that you currently use, you know, you and your wife, in order to build that retirement?
Yeah, so I use I'm a regular guy, man. I use a regular old 401k, right? My wife has a 403b.
Okay.
I use a regular IRAs. Our income is to the point where we can't contribute directly to the Roth, so we do, you know, the backdoor, you know, Roth conversion, and so we max out that every year. So we use a regular HSA that I have through my job, so I max that out as well for our family. So that's $7,200 a year, and then a regular old brokerage account, and that's it as far as investment accounts. So the four things, besides, you know, checking, emergency fund, but investing, we have 401k, so two of those that we max out each year. So that's about 39,000 between those two. IRAs, so that's another 12, and then HSA, another 7, plus brokerage. And then we have our kids' 529 plans. I forgot about that. So my son is 5. He just started kindergarten. He has about 41,000 or so in there.
That's
my
incredible.
daughter, I just checked yesterday, actually, my daughter's 2.5, and she has just over 20,000 in her 529 plan.
So y'all set them up well. That's definitely the definition of generational wealth right there, man.
Yeah, man. And just, so it wasn't anything. Everything was regular. We just started early. So I opened it up when my son was born, right? I figured out, well, how much should I put in? I just got it set up and did like $50, like a paycheck. And then I just said, okay, let me figure the rest out later. And then I started looking, I said, okay, well, how much does like an in-state, how much does tuition cost? Because again, I didn't pay for college, so I had no clue like what college even cost. And so I found, you know, whatever in-state tuition was, and I said, okay, an online tool, you can put it in, you know, you make some assumptions on what your returns will be, what the cost of college is going to do, and then it kind of spits out the numbers and says, here's how much you would need to invest a month based on those assumptions. And so I just stuck to that plan and said, okay, baby, like, here's what we're going to do, right? We need to put in this amount for this many years. And then, you know, college should be taken care of if we stick to that plan. And so, you know, I get a bonus. I throw in, you know, more money than that, you know, a little extra money. I keep throwing it in. And so that accelerated it to the point where now, you know, if you make some assumptions on returns, you know, maybe 10%, he's pretty much, his college is paid for right now, right? Yeah. He's in kindergarten. That 40,000 will build into about $270,000 by the time he hits college, if the market, you know, averages what it's been averaging. Who knows what'll happen with that? But yeah, so that's allowed me now to kind of refocus, pull some money out of that, and start repositioning that towards my daughters to accelerate that even faster. So it's really just, I haven't done anything, right? No options trading, no knock on any of that stuff. I'm a simple guy. I like the most efficient thing I can get for the best bang for my buck, right? So options and all the fancy things people do, that's great, and that would probably boost my income even more, perhaps. But it's just like I value like spending time with my family.
Yeah.
You know, simple thing that I could. Oh, S&P's up 1%. Okay, my portfolio is probably at 1%, and I don't have to think about it, right? So I just stick to regular things, man, that anybody has access to, and that anybody can do.
Good stuff, man. Good information. So why in particular did you choose a 529 instead of like a UGMA or something like that?
Yeah, I'm adamant about. I see it since I've joined social media. I see a lot of people have you know, the UTMA and UGMA accounts. Custodial accounts is what they're called, for anyone who's not familiar. But a custodial account is basically an account that people used to use before the 529 came on board. It's the history of it. So people use that to save for college, but then the 529 came along, but still this custodial thing kind of persists to some extent. But a custodial account is basically an account that parents open up for their kids, and the money is legally the kids when you put it in there.
Yeah.
The kid doesn't take possession of the money until 18 or 21, depending on the state you're in. But the reason I chose the 529 is because, honestly, I read on the custodial accounts, and I think a lot of people might undervalue the issues that could come along with the custodial accounts. A few of them are, like I said, the money is the child's. So imagine my son. So say I put all that money into a custodial account. By the time he gets to be college age, maybe he has close to $300,000. You got to legally turn the keys over to an 18-year-old kid with 300 grand, right? And hope that they're responsible enough to deal with that. So I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. I pray that my son is going to be the young man that I'm covering him to be, but I have no guarantee of that, right? And so I don't want to hand him like a loaded weapon that I can't control, and I've kind of helped cause to some extent, right? And so that's one reason I don't use the accounts. The second reason is when you file for financial aid, which maybe I won't qualify for, fine. But if you are filing for financial aid, the money that's tagged in the kid's name is very punitive towards them getting financial aid. So when you open up a custodial account, it's the kid's assets. So when they fill out the paperwork, that $300,000, for instance, in the UTMA account is going to count. And the college is going to say, bro, you already got money. Like, why are you asking us for money, basically, right?
You don't need it.
You don't need it. You got money in your custodial, like, use that. But if it's in a 529, it doesn't weigh as heavily on the federal financial aid. So you can actually get more financial aid with the 529 than you could with the UTMA. Now, there is one caveat to it that people, I think, maybe get hung up on. Since you've put the money into a 529, if you use it for something other than a qualified education expense, there is, I believe it's a 10% penalty you have to pay on that money. So people get kind of panicked and say, oh, well, what if my kid doesn't go to college? Or what if they, some other scenario, I don't want to pay this 10% penalty. And for me, I'm like, okay, that's nobody wants to pay a penalty, right? So you have a couple of options. You could either say, my daughter, I can roll it over and tag my daughter with that money. So maybe she goes to undergrad and then she wants to go to grad school, but my son doesn't. So that money can now go to my daughter's education. Or I can keep it invested. If my children have kids, I can then tag the money to be my grandchild's education, and maybe their college education would already be paid for and then some. If you do the math, you might have paid for 2 kids' college education if my son didn't use it. And so I'm just looking at it that way. If I got to pay the 10%, so be it, man. I've got enough returns on it. It's on the gains anyway. It's not my money. It's
It's on the gains. You're right.
It's on the gains. But with the UTMA, again, man, I don't know. Where I grew up, people who were, you would have thought they were straight and narrow in high school. You fast forward, man, unfortunately, like life kind of touched them in a negative way. And so I think of those stories on like, man, what if somebody, had a drug issue, and here they are at 17, 18, and you're legally about to turn the keys over to a couple $100,000, and there's nothing you can do to kind of stop it at that point in time, right? So I don't want that on my conscience, and so that's why I just caution people on the UPMA accounts. There's really no advantage to having an UPMA versus a 529, except for you can use the UPMA for whatever. There's no penalty on it, but there's really no benefit other than that, other than a small tax benefit you get from income that you might get on that account, but it's very small benefit. For me, I'd rather just earmark it towards a 529. It's still my money, basically. So if my son doesn't go to college or whatever it is, I still control that money versus kind of giving it to them just as they turn 18 or 21 and hoping that they're responsible with it, that they don't open up, a record studio, like whatever, start a rock band, whatever it is they want to do. Imagine yourself at 18 with maybe $100,000.
It'd be gone in a year.
I mean, when you hit 21, hey man, we going to the club, man. Hey, table service. You want a car? You really gonna get the a Honda Civic with 100? Nobody can tell you anything to do with that money, and so I'm raising my son to be a responsible financial steward, but that's not a risk I'm willing to take, and so I'm investing for him as well in my own brokerage account.
Yeah. Right.
And I think people maybe undervalue this as well, to where you can invest for your children in your own account and literally hand them money.
Yeah.
Because under the federal law, you can donate. You can gift under the gift tax. You can donate. You can gift. I think it's $11.5 million per adult in a lifetime, right? And avoid the federal gift tax. So there might be some taxes on it when you gift it, but that's the same thing as in the UPMA account. If you sell the asset, you're still paying capital gains tax. And so I'm like, I don't know how many people out here think that they might be giving away, $11.5 million, in an UPMA account. But I'm like, you just invest for it in a brokerage account and give it to the kid, right? And you still control it. So you can still be a parent after 18. Right, you being a parent doesn't stop, when they're 18, right? So you still have their best interests at heart. So that's what I'm doing, man. I'm protecting my kids and just being a good financial steward. I have no idea what the future is going to hold, and so I'm just investing like that. But investing for growth, but still investing to have some control over it, so I can make sure that when they get it, they're responsible enough to handle it in a way that it doesn't ruin them.
Man, those are such good points, because I've seen some really good parents. Their kids turn 18 or 19 and they might make some mistakes, man. And it has nothing to do with the parenting. People do what they do when they get older.
Yeah.
So those are good points, man. Who could live with the fact that their child had $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 that they blew?
Yeah.
That you could have had more control over had you kept it in one of those other accounts, like a brokerage account, 4 or 5.
Exactly.
Good points. Just a couple of comments. Don Johnson said, making your money stretch is a key component to making that money last. Facts.
Yeah.
Doug said work-life balance is where it's at. Moved from Florida to South Korea years ago, earning 1/3 the salary, but cost of living is so low, I can save and invest $1,000 a month. So that's some good stuff right there.
Yeah.
All right, man. Hey, so I just want to know, within all of these accounts that you invest in, what are the actual investments? So you tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm a index fund guy. I like just doing VTSAX. I actually just started investing in VITAX, which is the technology index fund for Vanguard. What kind of investments do you hold?
Yeah, I keep it simple as well. So I'm mainly in total US market funds. So for people familiar with Vanguard, that would be in the mutual fund version, VTSAX. The ETF version is VTI, but it owns, it's the whole US stock market in one fund. So when you invest, $100 is going to, 8% is going into Apple, and 6% into Facebook, and it kind of trickles down, through the whole U.S. stock market. So that's lion's share of my portfolio. I'm not too much in international, mainly because if you look at, maybe I'm a bit bullish on U.S., but for the past decade, the U.S. has been far and wide above international returns, mainly because of tech, right? So
Yeah.
tech has been booming for a decade. And so I think the U.S., let's say they average 11% for the past 10 years. International is at about 6 or 7%. And so that is diversification. And I have no idea what the future holds. The US's day, will come one day. But I figure those trends usually are not, in my opinion, timing the market trends. It's more of a longer term trend that you can kind of make a move to switch and reallocate to. So I've been heavy US because a lot of the target funds, which are great, by the way, if anybody's, looking to invest, you don't know what to invest in, look at a target date fund, take your birth year, add 65 or 70 to it, and you'll see a fund that's usually, 2055, 2060. Put your money in there, like set it and forget it. As you get older, they take you from more risk into less risk. They have you well diversified. Do that. The issue for me today with the target fund is a lot of them are 30, 40% in international.
Yeah.
And so that brings down the returns more than my hypothesis, not investment advice. So don't listen to me, but my hypothesis and bet on the US with the tech is still going to be strong, in my opinion, for a while. And if it changes, I don't see it changing from, US just goes to zero, gets cut in half overnight and international booms. It's usually some sort of like long-term trend that starts to happen that shifts it that way. So I'm just confident that hopefully I'll invest in, it's what is it? VT is I think the international one. I think I have that right on the Vanguard, but I can change my allocation myself. So yeah, a lot of VTI, a lot of VT SAX. I have some QQQ.
Yeah.
Yep. The NASDAQ 100 basically. So it's more tech heavy, you can call it, the NASDAQ. Everybody in the top 100 is not actually tech, but that's what it's kind of referred to as. Even in tech, if you look at the total market index or the S&P 500s, I mean, given that you have Apple and Facebook and Netflix and Microsoft, you're already about 25% tech in the S&P 500 anyways. So if somebody's bullish on tech outside of that, just make sure that you're checking what's underneath the hood of those other funds you have, because you may find out that you're 15% invested in Apple, and then you just have to ask yourself, do you want 15%? Is that good, or do you want less risk to Apple? So check the top 10 holdings of whatever funds you have. But yeah, I'm a big index fund person. Again, I'm lazy. I like to get the most bang for my buck, and just doing something that's easy and getting great returns. Investing in the S&P 500, puts you in the top 25% of investment managers, right, every year. So you could do something else, pay more money to get a little bit more and maybe get lost in the sauce of what's going on. I just stick to the simple things, man. So those are mostly most of my funds. I have some other smaller ones, but those are lion's share in those simple funds.
Yeah, and Greg FI just said, I started in retirement funds and switched to total stock and S&P 500 funds between Roth and 401k. It boosted my returns tremendously. So
yeah,
good stuff. And one thing I do like about VTSAX is what JL Collins says, is that it's self-cleansing. So as those funds underperform, they fall off of the index.
Yeah,
and more funds are added. So that's a really good
that's right,
part of it. So
now I will say this one caveat. I know, again, since I've been in the financial creator space, index funds are widely preached. Just do index funds. I do want to say, like, we need people to not everybody can't buy index funds, because if everybody's passive, you never have price discovery, because everybody just keeps every paycheck buying this thing. You need people who are actively investing that say, hey, I think Tesla is overpriced. I'm going to sell, or I'm going to short. So you need those players in the market, in those active funds and hedge funds, in order to, you might lose a little, but you need that price discovery mechanism. Otherwise, everybody just buying blind, and you have no idea what any value is, what any true value is. So we definitely need not everybody to buy market, index funds, But again, it's a great place to start for the average investor. If you don't want to spend a lot of time, buy these simple funds like S&P 500, target date funds, total stock market funds. It's simple. They're big. A lot of people do it, right?
Yeah.
A lot of companies do it. But we do need those other active players in the market to kind of help boost our returns and to really show what the value is.
Hey, that's a good way to look at it, man. So let's talk numbers now. So I came across your page on Instagram. I think the first post I saw, it had a $1.4 million net worth. And it said the goal by 2030 was $5 million. And one thing I could appreciate about you and a lot of the content creators that I see on Instagram is just the transparency, right? So if normal people don't get to see other normal people who are, you know, successful with money, who become millionaires, they won't know it's possible. So that's one thing I can appreciate, is just people being transparent. Why do you think, especially in our community, why do you think that money is so taboo?
We have maybe it persists in other communities, but like I know in the Black community especially, it's like mind your own business, like stay out of my business, right? I think that's one aspect of it. And two, you know, we don't have a lot of stories of generational wealth to kind of lean into. And so we don't really have these stories of people sitting around the table talking about business, right? And being an active ear as a kid listening to these sort of things. I remember I had an apartment, a couple of things. So yeah, about the numbers, by the way, I struggled with that when I first got on. I had no intent to be showing any of my numbers, right? Yeah. I said I was just posting articles, reposting stuff. But as I saw other people doing it, you know, I thought about it for a while and like did some social media soul searching, we'll call it. And I kind of went back to like, why did I even start this page like in the first place, right? And the reason I started it was mainly for people who look like me, who didn't come from the backgrounds, you know, that wealth was a thing, didn't have the resources. It wasn't a conversation that was typically had. And so it wasn't that information wasn't there. It just was that information wasn't at the tip of our tongues, or at the tip of our fingers that we were looking for, right? And so I came back to it and said, you know, I don't have to do it in a right way, because by that point I'd become a millionaire. And I've always been humble about it, right? And I didn't really even know I had it until I did my assets minus liabilities and said, oh, like, baby, hey, come here real quick.
We did it.
I didn't even know, right? So, but I didn't want to come off as like showy, especially because, you know, I said I started it on my Facebook page, people I knew. And so I wanted to do it in the right way so that it wasn't a kind of look at me kind of thing, but more of a look how it's possible, because like y'all know me, y'all know like how I grew up and we all grew up together. So I'm not making $6 million a year, right? And so this is a path to show that it is possible. And so when I talked about it with my wife, because, you know, we're investing together. And so she said, yeah, I think it's a good thing to kind of maybe show some transparency and hopefully people connect with that. And so that's the way I try to frame it. But right now we're nearing on $2 million. We're, I don't know, 1.97, somewhere in the ballpark there. So God willing, hopefully by year end, you know, we might be over 2 million. But I think in our community too, you know, it just isn't something that's really talked about. There's a lot of things, you know, that take priority over that in conversations, whether it be, you know, clothes, fashion, just music. I don't remember ever having a conversation with my homeboys growing up about money at all, you know, never. I remember I had an apartment and I went to go pay the rent. This is years ago when I was just getting out of college, I think. And I went to go pay the rent. This is before, you know, Zelle and PayPal and all this stuff. So I had to go like on a bus and give the guy a check. And I went to his office, and it was an older Jewish gentleman. And he had his grandson there at the office that day. For whatever reason, I'm not sure. But I remember I gave him a check, and it opens up his, you know, his register, and it calls his grandson over, and he's like kind of showing him like, here's, you know, I'm taking this money, here's where I'm putting it in the register. And I just kind of sat there and I just watched and thought, nobody's ever showed me anything money related, right? And I don't know how common it is in our community to have those come look, right? Come watch me pay the bills. Come watch and see how I do this. And hey, it might be a struggle, but like here's how it works. And so that little thing always resonated with me on how he was doing that. Also, I mean, I played football as well, but at one point, I played next to our practice was next to a professional team. And one day I was watching film, you know, I came out of practice watching film, and there was really nobody in the parking lot. And the way it was structured was we had one half of the building basically, and the pro team had the other half. So when you come out, there was the pro team's parking lot. So, you know, they had all the fancy cars out there and everything else. Our parking lot was like behind the practice facility. So we had to like walk through that parking lot, through the practice indoor facility, back to our parking lot. So I come out one day and I'm like, okay, like, oh man, there's the owner of the team coming out too. I'm like, well, where's his car at? Parking lot's pretty empty. My man gets into a Buick LeSabre. Buick LeSabre, man. Like, now during the day when the players are there, I'm talking, you know, Ferraris and I mean, you name it, they switching cars out like they switching like t-shirts. You know, it's like no big thing. And here's the owner getting into a Buick LeSabre, and that always resonated with me. He had no chauffeur. You know what I mean? Like, he was probably 70-something years old, driving himself. Now, I will say they had a dealership sponsor that team, some sort of, you know, partnership. So I'm sure he got it for free. Didn't even pay to drive that thing. But here's somebody paying everybody else's salary, but he's still living like obviously well below his means, you know, to drive a Buick LeSabre. And that stuck with me too. So I'm learning these little snippets of like, okay, it's important to kind of show people, especially your kids, how you're doing, like how to manage your money. It's important to not be flashy, right? And to live, if you got it, cool, but don't blow it, right? We all know the numbers on professional athletes: make a lot, spend a lot, don't have a lot, right? That's how that works.
Yeah.
But that stuck with me. So just seeing these little things are like, okay, here's people that are building wealth and doing like I'm paying you rent, right? And here's how you're showing your grandson how to balance this book. You're the owner of the professional sports team, got the weakest car in the whole parking lot, but you pay everybody else. Like, you're not worried about that, right? You're focused on other things. Like, now, guess who owns the team now? As part owner, his kids. You know what I'm saying? So when he left, you know, he gave it behind him, right? So that kind of shifted my mindset a bit to say, look, why am I working for? To impress people when I pull up at the stoplight who don't even know who I am.
They don't care who you are.
They don't even care who I am, right?
Or they don't like you.
Yeah, they don't even like me. Or when I go to the valet at a fancy steakhouse to throw the valet the keys to a nice whip, who doesn't even know me either, right? So I'm like, look, when I go home, you know, I live in a decent neighborhood, but I said my neighbor across the street has a Maserati. I ain't gonna lie, like when he pulls up, I see it coming up the street. I hear that purr. I'm thinking, ooh, I mean, yeah, that does look kind of nice. I'm not gonna lie, right? But the funny thing is that I got an 09 BMW, so old car, still looks decent, but
yeah,
it drives, right? And we got a Honda Pilot. But when our garage doors go down and his garage door goes down, you can't tell who got more money. You can't tell who has a nicer car, right? Yeah. So I'm like, what am I living for? To impress other people, or to like have something to build something for my family so that, you know, create some generational wealth to where it's the point where I'm not saying my family's going to be lazy, but they just have options, right? So me and my wife had to think about, we have 2 kids, like, how much is it going to cost us to have a third one? Like, is that a financial decision that we want to have, you know?
I can answer that question.
yeah. I listened to it, man. Yeah. So you have 3?
I have 3. We have 3.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And that third one just totally throws the balance off.
Yeah.
It is extremely expensive.
Yeah. And so we had to think about that. And I thought, what if my kids could just have kids and didn't have to think about, like, how much is this going to cost me? Can we afford to send them to college? Like all these things that I mean, I'm doing pretty well, but I still had to think about this, right?
Yeah.
So how can I like reduce some of that friction, just things that they might have had to, I had to think about, like, how am I going to get the money to buy my first house? Like, man, like, okay, like how much is it going to cost? Do I have enough? How can I just make it for them where they're just, hey, like my dad built something for us, and we can go out and buy the house that we want, with conditions, right? It's not in the UPMA account, right? It's going to be something attached to it. Have you done the right things? But that's what my focus has been on, man. Just like, I can't guarantee that my kids will be, making more money than me. I can't guarantee that. For all I know, this might be the branch on my branch of the tree. Like, I'm making the most that maybe the next 3 generations might make, for all I know. Yeah. Right. So how can I make sure I maximize my branch? Well, I got it. I can go out and get the Maserati. I can go out and do a lot of things. And then what if nobody comes behind me and does equal to or greater than me? It's a whole different situation. And that's not something I want to have go back to a welfare story whenever I had an opportunity to kind of really change the narrative. We're not big things, man, just like small things, small decisions, right? Yep. To start early, to just not go spend everything that I could spend, to just live below my means and to be happy with that, right? I'm happy. Yep. Maybe you could attest to it, but one nice thing about, being married is I'm not out in the club. I'm not trying to snag anything anymore, man. So
we too old for that. We too old for that, and we married.
Yes, so I'm content, man. So it's like, absolutely, if I roll up in something, like, who am I really impressing? Like, I'm a married man with 2 kids. Yeah. Like, I want to go home and spend time with my family. Like, who am I really trying to impress anyway? Yeah. I want to impress my wife. I want to impress my kids. And so that's really just helped shape my focus, man, on just being financially sound and solid and not worried about all the noise, man.
Yeah, their opinions are what matters most, right? I mean,
yeah.
Bottom line. And I know, basically by the fact that you can't directly contribute to a Roth IRA, I know you have a very high salary, it probably over 200,000 or whatever, but that doesn't mean you're going to be wealthy, right? So the fact is, you probably work with a lot of people that don't have the financial discipline or the wealth that you have. Some might still be in the red. I remember one time, the first principal that gave me a job, he had a conversation with me, and it really stuck to this day. He said that he has a doctor friend who made $400,000 a year. And he asked the doctor, he said, "Hey, how can you afford this stuff?" Because he's just buying all kind of boats, everything. And the doctor looked at him straight in the eye and said, I'm up to my eyeballs in debt. And that stuck with me to this day. Like, you made $400,000 a year and you're just drowning in debt. And, people think that you automatically can be wealthy just because you make more money, but you have to be financially savvy with that money. So,
yep, that's right. I mean, I need to do like a reel or a TikTok on this, but when I didn't go to the league, right, there were some people I grew up with, not in a bad way, but they were just always rooting for me to go, pro kind of thing. And so they were kind of, man, you should have gone pro, man. Oh, man, this kind of thing, like as though like it's a eulogy at my funeral or something. Like, like my life is over at like 22 years old. I didn't go pro, right? But now I'm on IG, and there's some dudes I played ball with in college who went to the league, and now they're asking me questions, right? On like, hey man, like how'd you do what you doing, man? Like you didn't go, you know what I'm saying? Like, so it's kind of come full circle where I didn't go to the league, but I got homies that went to the league who are asking me for advice, right? Like, hey, how should I get my finances like yours, man? Like, man, I should be farther ahead than what I am based on what I made, but I'm not. Like, so, how can I get better? And so it's just a blessing, man, I think, to live in a day and age where I don't know almost any of the people who follow me, but they found me, right? Yeah. And here we are connected on social media, and I can post something and help educate over 3,000 people with my fingers that I'll never meet in person, but I could have an impact in their life, man. So it's just a blessing, for me to be able to share some of the information and to help motivate anybody that I personally can.
I agree with you, man. Good stuff. Doug said, look how it's possible versus look at me is a refreshing attitude considering how most of social media conducts itself. Great stuff. And I agree, man. So I'm in the same boat as you, man. I want to show people that it's possible. Like, any post I ever make, I'm not, anybody that knows me knows I'm not bragging about anything, right? I'm still, sometimes I'm insecure about those things. And I want to go out of my way not to appear to be, you know, bragging about anything. But I want people to know, hey, it's possible. I'm just a regular guy.
That's right.
My wife is a regular gal, you know, and we got regular kids.
Yeah.
We're headed towards being millionaires, and there's nothing to be ashamed of, you know, because my first money lesson was the pawn shop. You know, and we knew when something was going into the pawn shop, it wasn't coming out.
Right.
So, you know, and I just said, hey, I never want to go through that, you know, moving forward. So,
and a lot of it, man, like what your story you just shared, it's about that awareness, right? I mean, I haven't come across that many people who weren't aware that money was an issue for them. Right? It's most people, since I've been doing the page, man, I realized there's a very distinct parallel with like money and health. Because with health, look, if you want to get fit, like everybody knows if you're doing well with your health or not, right? You know, based on what you eat, you know, right? How you look in the mirror when you're sure. Everybody knows if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, right? But to get healthy, it's not a complex formula, right? It's basically eat a little bit better. What is that? Less processed food, eat a little bit more salads and fresh fruits. You don't need to even have a gym membership. Go on some walks, maybe jog a little bit, hit some push-ups, like very simple things with just your body, and you'll start to have good results, right? Money is the same way. I think people, well, with the health, people think, okay, I got to have a gym membership, but then I got to have the right clothes to go to the gym. I don't have a friend to work out with. Well, I got to get a trainer. You start complicating way more than what it is. The formula is very simple, but you think you have to do and master all these other things. And so with wealth and building wealth, it's the same way. I think people realize they have a problem and they kind of know what they have to do, right? If you say the word budget, it's almost like you might curse in some people when you say that word, right? Because nobody wants to have a spending plan because it feels restrictive, right, on the surface. But it's like, do you budget? Well, no, I don't budget. Same thing with, well, do you eat healthy? I mean, I don't really want to do that. Can you give me something else that will get me wealthy without budgeting, right? Well, how about you invest? Well, I don't know what to invest in. I don't know how much I should invest. So are we compounded with all these things when it's simple as, look, just open up an account. You have a 401k, put some money in there. Open up an IRA. It takes you 3 minutes on Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab. Click the buttons from your phone even. You don't even need a laptop. From your phone, connect it to your bank account, you're done. Figure the rest out later, right? So just keep it simple. And I always say on my page, a lot of it is mindset. Like if you realize it's a problem, you have to want to fix it. Because if you don't want to fix it, you're not going to do it, right? You have to focus on, like, I have to put forth a little bit of energy into learning something new, right? Learning how to manage money. But whatever I think 99% of people do for their 9 to 5 takes more brain power and more knowledge than learning the basics about investing. I'm convinced of that. And so not thinking it's complex, just be simple. I do everything that's regular. Just open up the accounts and start. That will solve a lot of the things. Then you'll figure the rest out as you go.
Yeah, and you make some good points. I guess there was a study done that shows that the hardest thing is actually deciding to invest, not what you invest in. So yeah. So I have a couple more questions for you, but there's a question from I don't want to say his name incorrectly, Caspariello. Do you always buy ETFs at market? Is the spread even notable on highly traded ETFs? That's my only concern buying ETFs in my taxable account, which I am doing for tax efficiency.
Yeah, so they'll have different bid-ask spreads on them, and I'm not actively trading, right? So I'm buy and hold. So the bid-ask spread isn't something I'm really caring about because I'm not actively trading on that. But generally, I use an example. So these total market funds, there will be many of them, right? So there will be VTI, which is one from Vanguard. There might be another one. Let's do something different. Let's use VOO, which is Vanguard's S&P 500 fund. And then there's SPY, which is, I think that's run by State Street, I think might be the fund behind that. If you look it up, they might have slightly different bid-ask spreads. SPY is usually more for institutional investors, so I'm going to guess it's a little bit tighter. But it's negligible. Unless you're actively doing trading and that's going to hurt your profits, it's not really going to make a difference. I mean, look at it this way. You're already trading commission-free.
Yeah.
You go back 5 years ago, you're not trading anything without a fee, right? Yeah. It used to be, I remember E-Trade commercials like $9.95 per trade.
Yeah.
Like kind of
I remember
stuff.
that.
Yeah. Now, like it's like the curse word if somebody charges you a commission fee.
Yeah.
And you can do fractional trades, right? You don't have, $1,000 to buy, Apple per share or whatever. Okay, you got $7. You can invest with $7, like and own a piece of Apple. But generally, check the bid-ask spreads. If you're going to look to buy one or the other, you got to check a couple things: bid-ask spread, Sharpe ratio, how close are they managing to their benchmark, their returns, turnover ratio. So there's more things than this bid-ask spread that you might want to consider when you're looking at comparing two different funds that you could invest in.
So let me ask you this: if you are not investing to trade, like if you're buy and hold, what will be the reason to buy an ETF version of a particular index fund? Of course, if you're trying to invest into VTSAX, you need a 3,000 up front. But once you get to 3,000, why would you buy VTI when you could just continue to buy VTX? I know VTI is 0.03 expense ratio compared to 0.04, but why would why wouldn't you just buy the VTSAX index?
Yeah, I think there's some technical slight tax advantages to holding the ETF because I think the ETF, the way it's built, it just has better tax efficiency. So you don't get as much, I think, income off of it somehow. So you minimize your tax bill there. One other reason you might consider it is portability. So if you're buying VTSAX, the mutual fund version, if you're buying that in your Vanguard account, they won't charge you any sort of fees because you're in the house with Vanguard. But say you have a Fidelity account, you can go buy the Vanguard mutual fund, but now you're at Fidelity's house. Vanguard is charging you a fee to now buy that when you're outside of their house, right? So that's one reason why. So if you have all your stuff at Fidelity, you're going to be paying fees every time you purchase or sell the mutual fund that's at Vanguard. But since ETFs are basically trade like stocks, you can have a Fidelity account and own the Vanguard ETF version, the commission-free, fractional shares, and just buy that at Vanguard. I mean, in your Fidelity account, let's say. The one difference I'll say is with the mutual fund, you can you deposit your money in and it gets invested for you automatically. I think the last question that came in was asking, are you buying at market? Basically what that means is with the ETF, it's a stock. Generally, you can't automatically invest in ETFs. There are some services that allow you to do that, but you have to go and physically press the button to buy it in ETF. So it is a little bit more work. So if you're trying to invest every paycheck, you get paid twice a month, you have to go in twice a month and press the button to actually buy the ETF. Whereas the mutual fund, you can set up $200 or whatever, just a reoccurring, and it gets invested for you. So you have to know yourself a little bit. What are you predisposed to do? Are you predisposed to forget about the account? And that would be the worst thing you can do because your money would just sit in cash. You are nothing on it pretty much. Or go to Fidelity, buy the Fidelity mutual fund, and just get it invested. You open your account in Vanguard, buy the Vanguard mutual fund, and just get it invested. So it depends on the person. I've done both. So there's no real rhyme or reason. Either way, it just depends on who you are.
Good points. And Doug, I agree with VTSAX and Shield, most definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now, we're kind of wrapping things up. I could probably sit here with you for a few hours, man. You got some good information.
Yeah, I love to talk about it, man.
Oh, no,
my wife hears too much about it. So, it's an opportunity for me to kind of talk about it with somebody else.
Yeah, sometimes we become nagging husbands when we talk about finances all the time. I know Dave Ramsey became a cuss word in my house for a long time. So Speaking of marriage and speaking of wives, what, obviously we come into these marriages with different financial personalities, and, sometimes they clash, sometimes, they don't clash.
Yeah.
How do you and your wife you make it work? Do you have separate accounts, joint accounts, and do you have financial meetings every week, every month? How would you coach somebody that you're mentoring to be successful financially in the marriage?
Yeah, I think we've run the gamut. So again, like anything, everybody's life is different. So I can't I can't command somebody on the best way to do it, but I will kind of give some sage advice from us living the spectrum on all those different melding of finances into a marriage, and give at least my perspective and kind of let somebody do with that what they will. But when we got married, we were both in our 30s. So, we had lived life. I had a townhouse. My wife had a townhouse that we both had like just when we started dating. And so we had our own lives, right? So so we were independent people for 30 something years. Now here we are trying to do life together. So initially we had, we opened up a joint checking account. But in that joint checking account, we figured out, I sat down and said, look, here's our bills that we're sharing, right? Lights, gas, mortgage, think food. Here's how much I make, I don't know, 60%. You make 40%. So I put in 60% of that, amount that we need, you put in 40%. And so that's how we contributed to that joint checking. And then all the bills and stuff were paid from there. Now she still had her checking account on her end. I still had mine. I still had my savings account. She had a savings account, but that joint was just put it in and, that's it. Right. So we lived first couple of years probably like that. It got annoying to me because, if I get a pay raise or she gets a pay raise, she didn't really pay attention to it, but I know the fair thing to do is if I get a pay raise, I got to recalculate the number because I need to put in a little bit more to pay the bills, right? Yeah. I could have been shady and said like kept it 60-40, right? Yeah. And I keep more money for myself, but I had to keep recalculating things. And so I'm like, this is getting annoying. You got to go change your deposits and forget all this, right? And so I said, why don't we just try to, put all the money into one joint, right? And so that's a segue into what I'd say too is, if you want to have separate checking accounts, I just ask, the couple, what's the reasons why you want to have separate checking accounts? Because there's usually some emotion behind that thing, right? Is it trust? Is it like what are the issues why you wouldn't want your spouse to know how you're spending money? Could be that you all have gotten married and you've never even talked about like each other's money, right? So you don't even know what this person makes or what they're invested in or how much they have invested. Like you may not actually even know, because a lot of people get married and find out later that, that there's something financially going on that they had no clue about because they didn't ask, right? Yeah. And so I say, really just ask, like, why is it you want to be married in a union, but you want to keep like the financial part of your lives like separate? So again, I'll just table that and leave that where it may. But so we kind of talked about it, and I didn't hide anything. I didn't have, a side piece. I wasn't. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't spending money on things that I would be ashamed for her to see. Yeah. And so I said, look, I don't have anything to hide. So it makes it easier for us to manage because we can pay bills from the same account. Everything's there. We don't need to have 15 different accounts. Both of like, let's stop the madness. Yeah. So now we have one joint checking account where now we basically live off of my income. And my wife's income, it gets, after taxes, everything that gets invested. And then we're still able to invest, a nice size of my income as well. But it makes it easy. There's one checking account now, right? We have one emergency fund. We have some credit cards, but basically the credit cards we have, like I have a card, she's on it. She has a card, like I'm on it. So we were able to kind of stockpile our travel points. So we travel for, subsidize the cost with that. But now we don't have like, separate cards per se, where she's doing some spending on the side or I'm doing some spending on the side. It's open and transparent. And I'll say it's been helpful. My wife doesn't really look at it often. Every now and again, she might open up an account and say, what was this for? Or what was that for? I'm like, well, you remember you bought that thing, or, like, that was your money, but at least it's like, it's a weight off my shoulder, because it's like, I don't have anything to hide. And so if she ever had a question about where the money was going, like, it's right there, front and center. Like, there's nothing to hide, right? And so sometimes I'll do like, hey, you pay the bills and you handle everything, next couple of months, just to kind of, if something should happen to me, God forbid, like, she knows where everything is, and hey, here's how much I've been paying for this. And so she's tuned into the plan. I'll say one area we do struggle is we don't have, meetings religiously to review it. I stay on top of it, especially the page forces me to do it a bit, because it's easy content to kind of show your net worth or how much you've invested. So that's been a good way for me to stay honest and keep tracking it. But I just feel my life in when I do it. It's like, hey, babe, look, here's what our net worth is, or hey, here's how much we spent. We've migrated to using a budget app, so Mint. So my wife even commented a couple of weeks back, it was shopping or some clothing budget or something. So we had agreed beginning of the year, like, what do you think we'd spend per month in clothes? And we just put that number in the app. And Mint, whatever, she was buying something and it went over. And so it sent her like a little notification, like, chill. Like, hey, that clothing budget you said, like, yeah, you kind of blowing through that, what I'm saying? And so she even commented like, hey, like, did you send that? I'm like, I didn't send anything. Like, oh, wow. So
Mint,
at least it knew, right? So it causes that intentionality with being mindful of your money. And another thing I'm honestly, admittedly, I'm weak at is I'm not a religious tracker of where every penny has gone. I know some people are very like that might be their testimony, but that's not my testimony, man. Like, I can't sit down and tick and tie over $2 where it went. Like, I figure out how much do we want to have? What's my end goal as far as like net worth? How much do I need to invest to get there? Then how much? Okay, here's how much I need to invest per month in order to hit that target. If we spent, a little bit over on eating out, I'll know about it, because the Mint will tell me, and we'll kind of sit down from time to time and be like, ooh, like, do we really need to spend that much money on food? Maybe clamp down a little bit the next month, but it's not a what was me, because I know that we're on plan with what we've targeted. Yeah. We could fine tune it a little bit, right? And, cut some stuff off the end. But for me, that's where that life comes in. That brings some peace in my marriage, where I'm not, lording over the money and saying like, nah, we said we spent $800 in food this month and we're at $807. Like, no, like that's not worth it for me. Like, even if we're at 900, I'm like, oh, babe, like another 100. Well, okay, I took you out to dinner. That's what did it. So it's not a big deal. I'm not even going to talk about that, right? Yeah. Now, if we got to 1,600 or something, it's like, oh, we said 8. Or whatever it is. Like, we're way over. Like, hey, let's really be mindful the next month. But for me, I just want to have a peace, easy, like I keep saying, and just get the most bang for it. So I don't really lord over, every penny that might bleed out of the account somehow, some way. I'm like, let's have some fun. We're still on track with our goals. Let's focus on that. I'm not going to nitpick over, $2 and spend an hour trying to research that.
That's a good point, man. And I agree with you. I'm team, joint account as well. For years we have actually done a joint account. Yeah. I will say this, for a long time, and this is definitely a moment of transparency. For a long time, my wife felt confined. She felt I was, looking too hard at what was going on within that account. So I did say, once we were financially free, I said, hey, let's go ahead and open our own joint account, or our own separate accounts for blow money, so if she's trying to buy me a birthday gift, and I look in our joint account and say, hey, why did you spend $250 so-and-so? And she's like, I can't even surprise you with a birthday gift. So now it's like, hey, we have these little separate accounts with a little bit of money that goes in each month, you know, and she gets her 20 Amazon packages each month. I don't question it, you know, because that's her blow money, you know. So, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like, you know, I whether or not I make 65% or 70% of the income, it's all one pot. You know, that's what we got.
You know. You're right. That was the biggest mind shift, I think. You know, for us in our marriage, when it comes to money, that it wasn't, it was no longer a me island, right? It became a we island. And so it's not going to be a story where, well, babe, like I've been investing my money, right? So I'm retiring, but you keep working for another 10 years, right? Like that's not the game, right? The game is to be together and work together on these things. So yeah, you know, we still have she has a credit card in her name only. I have one in my name only. So if we buy birthday gifts or something, like that's how we would run that. But generally, I'm not looking at it that closely. I said it's a bit of a weakness. So I'm not looking every day on like, you know, where did you spend the money, like to even see that? I look at it maybe once a month. So by the time I would even see it anyways, if she bought it from like an account I could see, the birthday or Christmas probably already passed anyway. So, you know, I'm not lording over it at that level.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, you know, you have this seemingly ridiculous goal of $5 million net worth by 2030. But the fact that you've gone from 1.4 million to 1.9 million since November last year to now, that shows me that, you know, it's very possible. And you'll probably get there by 2027 or 2028. So
I hope so. I hope so. And to that point, I mean, as you know, the compound interest is, you know, one of the wonders of the world. So one thing, it's like, you know, it's like a person who, you know, you might have gotten in shape, maybe lost some weight, but you still see yourself as like your old self, right? So this is the same way. Like I didn't realize we were millionaires until we were, right? So even when I had 1.4, I still it didn't resonate with me that we were doing anything like extraordinary, because everything we do to me is like regular, right? So even now as we approach 2 million, I'm like, oh, okay. Like I said, babe, like we're about to be multimillionaires. And she was like, okay, like
I'm still anticlimactic, right?
Yeah, it's like I'm still going to work. So like wasn't you like and so right. And so but it became more transparent that like, look, if the market goes up, you know, 20% this year, well, if you got $1 million, that's $200,000. That's your money just went up. Like you didn't do anything, right? And so, you know, that's where it's coming from, where it's like I said in one post, like, you know, compound interest, like my 9 to 5 has become like my side hustle, because my compound interest is making more money than I am going into work every day, you know, at least the way the market's been going recently. Like we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but like, yeah, that big jump you said, like we don't make that much money versus what we've made this year in returns on the market, but that didn't happen overnight, right? It was no diss to anybody investing in crypto heavily. Like that wasn't our story. We just started consistently investing early and often, you know, little piece by little piece. And I should have been doing more, like looking back, but I told you I was doing like the minimum until I smartened up, Nas, and said like, look, I got to go and do a little bit more. If I want to get there, I'm a little behind now. I need to ratchet it up. But if you start early, you start, you know, the better off you would be. And even if, you know, you're up in age, you're 40 plus, whatever, and you're thinking like, man, I should have started early and it's a sorrow party. Like focus on the future, because if starting now, you still have time to make a drastic difference. It may not be as easy as it was if you were 25, sure. But if you keep waiting and feeling bad for yourself and letting a week, months and years go by, it's not making anything any better. So just focus on the future, because you can still make a big impact on your financial future if you take action, right? So you can't just keep delaying. You have to really just clamp down, take action, and make a move.
I agree with you. And you also need to realize that your personal journey is unique to yourself. You know, don't compare yourself to others. You and I think you're a little younger than I am, but your net worth is way, way larger than mine is, you know, but we're looking at our individual situation and circumstance, and we are headed in the right direction. So
yeah,
it's
exactly.
important to just continue sharing this information. I really appreciate everybody who has tuned in tonight. Y'all go ahead and share this channel, share this video, and share all the information as much as you can. I want as many people as possible to be financially independent. That's our goal. That's what we're trying to do. Can you share with everybody the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, right now I'm still working on my website, but the Instagram is Worth Life Balance. No underscores, no periods, just straight Worth Life Balance. I'm on Instagram, so find me there. I'm going to be posting content. I try to post 4 to 5, maybe 3 to 4 times a week. So I don't bombard you with 16 posts a day kind of thing. I try to make it quality stuff, and just kind of put the info out there. I'm going to work on a website. I'm still working on that actually, but the link will be in the bio. I'm going to be releasing some resources for people, some tools on how to master your 529. We talked about that a bit. How to master your emergency account. People seem to have gravitated towards something I do in my emergency account. I've made 15 grand in the past 2 years off of having my money invested in my emergency account. So I think I'm going to put something together to kind of a master class on that. So stay tuned. But all the content on the IG, totally free. Soak it up. My page is about 3,000 something followers so far. So it's still manageable for me. So I've been pretty responsive to DM. So that's why we're here right now, right? Yeah. If it gets much bigger, I can't always promise how responsive I'll be with the volume of DMs. But if you have questions, I'm happy to help out as much as I can.
Hey, I appreciate that. And before we leave for the night, one thing you did mention was, talking about, finances at dinner, at the table. And I just want to give a plug to Rich and Regular. They have a program called Money on the Table, man. And the first season was great. Second season has just blown me away. So if y'all have a chance to tune in to Money on the Table, man, that'd be awesome. So
good stuff.
Hey, Brandon, man, I just want to thank you for tuning in. You could have been doing so many other things right now this late, but you chose to sit with me, and I appreciate it.
Man. Appreciate you having me, man.
Hey, anytime. We'll definitely be in touch, my man.
All right. Take care.
All right. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thanks.